contributions. So today what I was going to do is I was going to talk about, whoops, I just opened up, no, I don't want the captions, 52 things when you switch from Teams to Zoom is always fun. Okay, so let's see if we can make this full screen. There we go. So one of the projects, Seville and I have continued to work together. And one of the things that we're very interested in is about persuasiveness and can it actually impact behavior? And this is something that right now we're trying to do a 360 look because a lot of times, a lot of research that'll look at persuasion will look at it from either the angle of the influencer or the angle of the audience or the followers. And then there's obviously tons of research about brands trying to influence. So what we're looking at is we wanted to triangulate, and it is a 3-part study. We are actually working on coming up with a scale to more effectively measure ethos, pathos, and logos for persuasion, so that both brands can compare what they're doing to influencers and also government agencies. So some of you might work with NHS, or you'll see different campaigns that government agencies will do trying to convince audience members to change their behavior. And a lot of times the standard way of doing this research is, oh, okay, we're gonna interview, or we're gonna do a survey. And with social media and with the abyss of information that people are willingly putting out there, to me, the quantitative content analysis has been something that both Seville and I have adopted for the last couple of years with the majority of our research, because it provides us a different advantage. But we'll talk a little bit about that later on. So when it comes to sustainability, whether it's climate change or whether it's fast fashion or it's the UN sustainability goals, there's problems both for government agencies, for brands, for individuals. And so our big focus is looking at sustainable consumption, because sustainable consumption, it does, pass through, whether it's working with our fashion colleagues who are doing research on how brands are trying to do it, opposed to how influencers are actually trying to differentiate themselves and say, actually, we believe in this type of sustainability. This actually ties into de-influencing later on, which I'll mention. When it comes to policymakers, especially in the UK, there have been calls for evidence about how sustainability could be improved amongst the nation. So whether it's the development of 15-minute cities, or whether it is about reducing energy consumption, a lot of policymakers tend to look at this as a large problem. Businesses, obviously, you might have varying opinions about buying carbon credits, but it is unusual to find a business that is not addressing in some form or fashion their environmental impact. Whether they're greenwashing it, or whether they're actually saying, okay, this is the true changes that we're making without legislation forcing us. There's a lot of challenges, obviously, when it comes to sustainable consumption. So when we look at advertisements and brands, there's a lot of elements where they're not actually necessarily delivering sustainability. So they might put in their messaging, oh, we've been made, oops, sorry, good. That's not my exam board. So it could be that businesses are saying that they're actually doing it, but it is, like we have seen traditionally, greenwashed. And the definition of, okay, what about it is sustainable? I mean, Primark, which is the epitome of fast fashion, has actually gone out and said, oh no, our supply chain is becoming more sustainable, how we're moving, the cotton for the fields with sustainable energy. But consumers and audience members, they understand, and once that trust is lost, then that green advantage is no longer seen as something that they're willing to engage with. And so obviously that can hit the bottom line for, market share. And so a lot of the brands that we do try to look at, whether they're small startups or whether they're larger organizations, it's about exploring those alternative marketing tactics that will enable credibility, authenticity, trust amongst the audience so that they don't feel it's being greenwashed. There we go. So with influencers, it's obviously, when we look at influencer marketing, we're looking at individuals. And there's not many universities that actually have a specific degree on influencer marketing. I mean, obviously at Bournemouth, you can study in the marketing communications elements involving influencer marketing, but we don't have degrees necessarily that teach influencers how they can have these skills. So a lot of them will rely on what they are saying is their expertise in an area, or rather their niche. And so when we wonder about these influencers, and we look at them and like, can they actually persuade? Because this is individuals that people will have parasocial relationships with. They don't necessarily, know the people, but they may feel a connection, especially with your nano and your micro influencers. They're perhaps interacting with them. And so there are a lot of arguments and studies that start to show, well, they can influence people, we can have a return on investment, especially with affiliate marketing. You can see how it ends up if they're using the code or not. But we see that a lot of the younger generations with distrust in the media, that they're really moving towards these influencers that they believe know what's going on, that they must be experts because, they're specialized in their particular area. And there are a lot of different types of influencers that do educate themselves. Perhaps, they have a background in sustainable development, or perhaps, they've gone through and done a lot of research on their own. But this particular niche, as we started exploring, we realized that it is very difficult to say, I'm an influencer, I specialize in this sustainability aspect. So a lot of them, it's just the ethos that they're living or the way that they're living their life. But brands still, use them for a lot of campaigns. So the main issue is that usually influencer marketing is used to raise awareness. If I'm a brand and I have a new product and I want to break into a new target audience, or perhaps I want to expand my particular target audience, or I have a new product, then I will use influencers to go ahead and maximize that growth of awareness. And that type of awareness is different than actually impacting behavior. So when we start to look at, can they actually impact behavior? Are these influencers differentiating themselves from content creators? Are they being strategic in the aspect where they can actually influence and persuade folks to adopt sustainable behaviors or sustainable lifestyle or things of that nature? And of course, we do have the terms intended behavior and actual behavior, because I can say I intend to go on a diet next week, but will I actually? So, there is that difference, and those who are, fans of theory, planned behavior, et cetera, know the arguments on that. So what we did with this particular study is we decided we were going to investigate the nuances of the persuasive messaging. We were going to see that if an influencer used pathos, ethos, or logos, when they were putting together their strategic messaging, how were the audience members going to interact? This is the first stage of the study. We do, in the second stage currently, we are looking at the brands that the influencers did influencer marketing with or affiliate marketing with, and to see if the messaging is different and if the audience is different. We did use the moderating effect of whether it was an organic content or if it was affiliate or ad. This is because a lot of studies are showing that if the audience says that it is sponsored content, then frankly, they may not be as positive to show that. And again, sustainable brand messaging. So we can kind of triangulate to see, is there an actual difference between what the audiences are saying on either platform? So what we ended up using is Aristotle's concepts of pathos, ethos, and logos. And then we routed it through elaboration likelihood model for persuasion about attitudes, attentions, and behavior. And so when we talk about ethos, we were looking at the main issues of credibility, the character of the individual. The pathos was what emotional impact were the influencers using, thinking of advertising appeals, things of that nature. And then when it comes to logos, that coherence, that clarity, that common sense. So what we have done, and this is where we're actually pulling some of the content to try to triangulate that message, is that the commonality is the audience, the people. We really just want to see how their attitudes, if they can even be persuaded, are they more persuaded by brand messaging? Are they more persuaded by influencers? And then, of course, later on, we can pull into government messaging, where you have different government institutions that tend to look at encouraging sustainable activities. So when it comes to quantitative content analysis, the main issue with this is that we are using priori codes. So we are taking academic scales that are established, that are tested, that are traditionally used for quantitative studies. And we have categorized those into our protocol sheet. And what we're trying to take from that is saying, okay, what words are associated with that? How, if we look back at that original scale development, how could we interpret that so that when we look at the content on Instagram and we're looking at the posts that the influencers are making, how to go ahead and actually code it. So the advantage of this, obviously, is that, with the coding, we can replicate across the board to see, are the other coders doing similar elements? The priori code sheet has been a life-saving aspect, but with quantitative content analysis, it's fairly objective in terms of you're looking at a scale and you're saying, okay, how can this scale be applied in this particular measure? It does help get rid of personal bias. So if you're doing a qualitative content analysis where you are looking at sentiment and words and the meaning and what the inferences are, it is where we find a lot harder to kind of understand what was going on if we were saying, okay, what was that message? Let's analyze what is that message actually trying to say. So again, great for large amounts of data. There are, if you have an in vivo, I think it's 13 professional right now, it allows the API code to pull mass amounts of data to do social analysis, I think through Twitter. Instagram, one day it's there, one day it's not. I'm waiting for it to be able to do TikTok, but you can use a much larger data set, so it's faster. And of course, I do like the fact that we can look over time. So it in this particular case, we're looking at 1 week in time because we wanted to get as many influencers and at a particular time before Earth Day. And you can say, all right, has this changed over time? So you can, write code that'll crawl the website and capture all of that. And again, by systematically encoding, it allows us to take it to that next step where we can go ahead and input it into SPSS and see the relationship via our hypotheses. Now, there is some challenges when doing this. So it can be time intensive. Setting up the protocol sheet, going back and forth, your ethics committee will sometimes be like, why, inform every single influencer. There's a great book by Kosnitz on ethnography, and he discusses the ethics in deep. I think he just had his 3rd version come out. But it can also, you do have to make sure that what you're coding is consistent across the basis. And sometimes there's like nuances with languages. I always struggle with emojis. I'm Gen X, so I think that the crying face means one thing and that the skull means another. And so I always laugh because different folks, when coding that type of emojis, I'll be like, no, this is what the latest one is. And they're like, no, that's not quite how it works. So this is just part of the beginning of the coding sheet. And what we do is that we usually sit down with Excel and we'll start saying, okay, what is this? And then as we're going through, we'll start to add some notes. So like our categories that we started with ended up actually being completely different categories, whether it started off a categorical or ended up being numerical. So this is just, some of the control variables that we're doing. And then we started to make sure that when we do put the protocol sheets in the appendices, when we submit for academic journals, that we've referenced, this is where the scales come, this is where the scales come. So usually this will be what we're sending. But then again, you can see here that we started to notice that there was couples that we had not anticipated. There's a large increasing amount of couples pages. There had been family pages in the past, but now we're seeing an increase of that. We're seeing an increase of CGI virtual influencers. So whether you like Little Michaela or some of the other ones, we're seeing a lot more differences of influencers. So we started to put things in different areas of expertise. What is that person who says they are sustainable focusing on? And as we kept going on, our protocol sheets. So this is an example of where we just used just the one tag sustainability, sustainable and sustainability. And so, we can only get, one of the issues is the followers for the day that the data is captured. That is the exact minute that is correct. The influencer categories, obviously, are they nano, going micro, etc. We have been looking so we can compare about the amount of followers, about how many the influencer themselves is following, how many posts are they posting overall, are they getting into merchandising? When it comes to de-influencing, we're seeing a lot of increase of, especially with sustainable influencers who are like, oh, I would never buy this product because it's this. And then they'll use the hashtag de-influencing. Whereas we are seeing on other genres, fashion, straight fashion, not sustainable fashion, where they are going kind of like negative reviews. We started to look at, how many paid sponsorships are they saying that they do in a week, opposed to their affiliates, opposed to content each week. And then as we go through each post that every influencer does in a week, we will categorize under all of these characteristics. And so one of the challenges with that is that some influencers will have 15 posts in a 1 week period. You're like, they're posting like 2-3 times a day, then they'll post one next day. Whereas you'll have some other ones that will sit there and they'll only post 2 or 3. So that actually caused us some challenges. Because originally we're like, okay, we can compare, but we realized, no, we actually didn't want to do binary logistic regression, one or no. And so we ended up taking their messaging and saying, okay, this is what it is. So empathy, what we had done is we have a list of codes, and then it goes from 1 to 9. And we had originally looked in that manner. Again, sentiment words. This isn't opening, but we would have all the words you could run through in vivo saying, okay, what are the positive words that keep coming up? We did notice that some influencers started to hide the likes. Instagram allows that. And then, of course, my favorite is the non-related vanity comments that folks are making. So, oh, you're so beautiful, or, oh, I've DM'd you, please respond. Things that have nothing to do with the post. So here, what we have is already when somebody says that they've committed. So an audience member, every time that they say, okay, we are, I'm going to move this to the side. I've already bought this product. I'm so happy. We will accumulate how many times they've done that, opposed to, oh, wow, I can't wait to try this. So when it comes to intended behavior, we're really trying to look at those words that say, okay, what did they say? Are they actually intending to do this? Oh, I'm going to use that affiliate code. So, that intention, we're able to separate from, I've already completed, I bought this product, I love it. So that's one way that we could be able to see. And for influencer marketing, the implications are that if brands start to actually say, okay, we want to know what is the intention of your audience, doing that content analysis, then it's something that even influencers themselves can start to provide value to the brands. So the model, like I said, the message formulation, when you do a quantitative content analysis, one of the challenges is deciding how you're measuring those variables. Is it going to be one they have it, zero they don't, and you're stuck with, binary logistic regression? Or are you going to say, here's different categories, or is it going to be on a scale? And so in our particular case with the independent variable, the message formulation about when the influencers are actually producing the content. So we had to do a cumulative across the board, a cumulative, what is their score? And this can bias because it shows that influencers who produce more content might use pathos or ethos or logos more often. They might have larger audience intention. And so some of the control variables, we can control for, well, if it's a nano influencer or, what's the audience engagement rate. We went ahead and looked at the weakening effect. So the moderation of if the promotional tactic was affiliate or sponsored, then we would look to see if it weakened the relationship because people don't like to be sold things sometimes. And this is actually what the model ends up looking like. So we do have influencer category, nano, etc., and the post type itself. And so when it came to the findings, when it came to the actual behavior, so if an influencer used the pathos as their strategic main overarching message, then when it came to actual behavior, it was significant. But everything else, whether it was intended, whether it was with the moderation, all of those ended up being rejected. And then we found when it came to ethos, everything was rejected. Logos, everything else was rejected. So it's always fun when you have a bunch of concepts and nothing's actually supported except for one. But what we did find is that amongst the sustainable influencers, there was a clear preference to use affiliate codes opposed to paid promotion. And so, that's something that if I am a brand or an organization, a lot of companies are now saying, oh, you can reach out to us and register to become an affiliate. So the brands are able to be passive in that aspect, where they're not having to pay, or some of them won't pay the affiliates unless, a certain amount of income is generated from that particular affiliate link. So, this is something that when we start to look at about persuasion, we understand that this particular group of sustainable influencers, there was the first round was 50 of them, and it was all females, and they were all younger. Unfortunately, Instagram doesn't tell you the age, and so you're looking, so we can't actually control for that. But it is something that when we look at it, we think, okay, was the wrong persuasion message being used? Was there a different way that one could use persuasion better? Was there an issue with the scales that we used to measure persuasion? Because it could be that for sustainability, that it is more of an emotional impact, and they're going to do one thing opposed to, oh, here's scientific facts of why you should do this or this or that. But we did see that there was a lot of attempt when it came to promoting affiliate codes. So that in itself just kind of gave us the attitude of, when we go to look at those brands that are doing the affiliate, what's the policies that they're using? Is there something there that is causing people to kind of focus on that instead of actually paid content? So I know that that is relatively a flyby drive through, but if anybody has any questions, or if you're looking at doing some quantitative content analysis, or you're wanting to apply it, please, I'll stop sharing and love to hear what you have to say.